Hello guys, today we will code more widgets and do some interaction between them. So we're gonna start with the button widget. Usually when we define a button and the user clicks on that button, then he is expecting that something would happen, right? So in other words, when we define a button, we have to define a callback function that will be executed or called when the user clicks on that button. Now the coding part is very simple and straightforward. First, we have to create a new class and pass the button object. So here I'm gonna type a class named myButton and pass the button object. And we need to import the button class in the first place from Kivy. So I'm gonna say from kivy.uix.button import button. Now inside that class, I defined our function named do_action that will be called once a user clicks on the button. Keep in mind that I used a special syntax which is *args when we are not sure how many arguments might be passed to our function. So it will allow us to pass an arbitrary number of arguments to our function. We're gonna talk about the passed argument after a few minutes, and currently I made a return keyword as basically we will not do anything yet if the user clicked on this button. Secondly, we defined the button widget in our Kivy string. So I'm going to create a widget name called myButton. Note that the widget name has to be the same as our class name. And under that myButton, I will define a text. So this text is the syntax that will appear or show up over the button. And the other variable is onRelease. So onRelease defines the event that would happen and the function that will be called once the user click and release the button. And in our case, that function is called do_action. Now notice that I used the self argument before calling the actual function. Now self is just a naming convention and technically you can use any other name. But in Python, it's a well-known argument to refer to instance attribute. Okay, so to recap really quick what we have done so far, I created a new button widget and defined the action that will happen once the user click on this button. And in our case, we will call a function called doAction. The second part, we made a new class with the same name of our widget, and under that class, after clicking on the button. Okay, let's test the code right now. And we got our button showed up right here. Alright, let's jump back to the code and let me change the button name to make it something more convenient. And I will name this one to this one to attack. Let me save the file and run the code one more time. Okay, great. Now instead of making nothing on the button event, I want to show a pop-up window to the user. But first, let me get rid of this label just to get, a better looking here. Alright, so the first thing that we should do is to import the pop-up class from Kivy. So I'm gonna type from kivy.uix.popup import popup. And under the do action function, I'm gonna create a pop-up object, define the pop-up title and content. So let us type pop-up and the title is, this is the title. For now, the content is gonna be a label, and the label has the value or a text value of, let's type, this is the content. Note that the content of the pop-up can be referred to other widgets like a label that we have just used here, and also we can use a button widget or a progress bar widget. Okay, since the content of the pop-up message is a text label, we have to import the label class. So I will type from kevy.uix.label import label. Okay, the last step we have to call the open function for the pop-up object. Okay, let me run the code, and I will click on the button, and fair enough, we got our pop-up message, but its size is too big, isn't it? So let's try to shrink it down a little bit by assigning a value for the size hint variable. The size hint format is a tuple of values for width and height. The percent is specified as a floating point number in the range between 0 and 1. So when we say 0.5, this means 50%, and when we say 1, this means 100%. Okay, so I'm gonna make the width equals 0.7 and the height equals 0.3. Okay, let's run the code, and fair enough, it is much more better here. Alright, now let's move a step forward and see how we can handle an input from the user using the text input, and then we will print it out on a pop-up window once the user clicks on a button. To handle a user input, first we need to define an ID for the text input. Now this ID is used to link the user input with other widgets. So here under the text input we define an ID named variable, and under our button I created a variable named user input, and it will contain the value of the text for the variable ID. You can think of this statement as following: user input equals the text value of the ID. Now at this point, the final step, instead of showing a static text in our pop-up content, we can use our user input variable directly in our pop-up message. So I'm gonna change the text value in our content label to equals self.userinput. Okay, so let me run the script, and I'm gonna write my name, Hussam, in our text input, and when I click on the button, we got my name on the pop-up message. Okay, that's great. Now let me introduce a progress bar widget. A progress bar is used to give the user an indication that some progress is going on behind the scene for a certain activity. To code a progress bar, what we have to do is to create a progress bar object and then control its progress via a function called value. But the point here, in order to move or increase the progress bar from time to time, we have to import the time library and use the sleep method. The downside for using the sleep method that it will hold or freeze the execution of the entire application, so we have to break it down into a separate thread in order to evade this issue here. Now coding this progress bar widget needs a little work than other widgets. So I'm gonna start with importing the necessary libraries, which are the time and a threading library, and the last one is progress bar. The threading library allows us to call the function that contains the progress bar in a separate new thread. Now within the button class, I will separate the progress bar into a different function and call that function into a separate thread. Again, we will do that to avoid blocking the application execution. So I made def progress bar self. Next, we create a progress bar object called PP. PP stands for progress bar, and I will copy the pop-up code that we wrote before, but instead of making a label as the pop-up content, I will replace it with the progress bar object. After we open the pop-up window, we will sleep for 2 seconds. And push the progress bar to 25% forward. And you know what? Let's change the pop-up title to something more convenient, like brute forcing, for example. This is a good title since this action needs time to be accomplished. The final step is to create a new thread and call the progbar function and start the thread. So to do so, I'm gonna type threading.thread. The target is self.progbar. And we will start the start function. And believe it or not, that's it. Alright, to recap quickly, once the user click on the button and release, the doAction function will be called. And once we are inside the doAction function, we're gonna make a new thread and call the progbar function, which in other hand will make a pop-up message with the progress bar. And after 2 seconds, we should see a 25% progress in our bar. Okay, let's test the script right now. And I'm gonna click on the button. Okay, and fair enough, we got our progress bar named brute force, and it is 25% filled here. Okay, cool. So now I will push the progress bar a little forward. So I'm gonna copy and paste these 2 lines and make the delay time to 4 and 6 seconds and the progress bar to 50 and then 75%. So finally, the delay is gonna be 8 seconds in order to complete 100% of the progress. before running the code, let me add a simple print statement after initiating the thread, just to confirm that the sleep command does not affect the wall execution. Okay, let's do a final test and run our script. Okay, so we got our bar moving, and here is our print output. Okay, and after a while we got it completed. Okay guys, that's it for this video, and thank you very much for watching.